What kind of world lets a woman be sold like cattle? This was the question burning in Lydia Owens's mind as she clutched the wooden posts behind her, trying to keep her knees from giving out. Sheridan, Wyoming, April 1878. The dusty town square smelled of sweat, horses, and cruelty. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on her like she was something to buy, not someone to protect. Her honey-blonde hair hung in tangled waves around her tear-streaked face. 3 days ago, she had been a married woman with a home. Now she stood in front of strangers while Frank Chambers, the auctioneer, lifted his voice over the crowd. "Next up, gentlemen, Mrs. Owens. Sold to settle her husband's gambling debts. Bidding starts at $50. Lydia felt her stomach twist. She still couldn't believe Thomas had done this. He had lost heavily at cards to Jeremiah Quinn, then vanished in the night, leaving behind a signed deed and a sickening note that handed her over as payment. She had begged Frank to stop it, but the paper was legal, and Sheridan had rules that cared more about debts than dignity. 50, came a rough voice. She froze. Wilbur Simmons, owner of the brothel at the edge of town. 60, another man shouted. 75, Simmons countered, his tone hungry. Lydia shut her eyes tight, refusing to look at the men bidding on her future. The hot spring wind stung her skin, but she didn't know if the burning in her eyes came from dust or shame. 100, a new voice called. It was clear, steady, different. Lydia looked up. A tall man leaned against the hitching post at the back. He wore a worn leather vest and a faded blue shirt, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't look like the others. He wasn't sneering. He wasn't hungry. He was simply watching. 125, Simmons snapped. The stranger straightened. 300. The crowd gasped. 300 was a fortune, going once. 350, Simmons spat. 500. The stranger said without hesitation. A heavy silence fell. No one could match that price. "Sold! $500 to the gentleman in the back!" Frank shouted, pounding his gavel. Lydia's legs trembled as the crowd broke apart. Some men grumbled in disappointment. Others stared at her with pity. But the stranger walked toward her with slow, steady steps, his spurs jingling. Now that he was close, she could see him clearly. He was younger than she guessed, maybe 30. His jawline was strong beneath several days of beard. His eyes were clear blue, calm and steady, the kind of eyes she had never seen in a man before. "My name is Heath Vance," he said gently. "I'd like to speak with you, Mrs. Owens." "Not here. Will you allow me to escort you to the hotel dining room?" She swallowed hard. What choice did she have? But something in his eyes made her believe he wasn't like the other bidders. "I have nowhere else to go," she whispered. He nodded, then turned to Frank to sign the sale papers. Lydia looked away as Frank handed the bill of sale to him. She hated that a piece of paper now defined her life. Heath walked beside her through the street, careful not to touch her. People stared as they passed. Lydia kept her gaze on the ground, trying to swallow the lump in her throat. Inside the hotel dining room, he pulled out a chair for her and sat across from her only after she sat. He ordered her tea, himself coffee. When the waitress left, silence settled between them. "Mr. Vance," Lydia finally asked, "what do you expect of me?" "You paid a great deal." Heath's expression darkened. "I expect nothing from you," he said. "What happened today was wrong. No human being should be bought or sold. I purchased your contract to give you your freedom." Lydia stared, unable to breathe for a moment. "My freedom?" Heath reached into his vest, pulled out the bill of sale and tore it in half, then into quarters, then into smaller pieces until it was nothing but scraps on the table. "You're free to go wherever you wish. I'll give you enough money to start somewhere new." Tears filled her eyes, not from fear this time, but from shock. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" $500 is a fair price for doing what's right," Heath said simply. "I've seen too much injustice to walk away." "You're not from Sheridan," Lydia said. "No, I'm heading to my ranch near the Montana border." "A rancher?" He gave a faint smile. "Among other things." When she told him she had no family and nowhere to go, Heath listened without interrupting. When she explained Thomas's lies, his jaw clenched in anger on her behalf. Finally, he leaned forward. "Mrs. Owens, I have an offer. Not a demand. Honest work. My ranch needs a housekeeper. You would have your own cabin, fair pay, and safety." Lydia's heart pounded. The alternative was staying in Sheridan, where people had watched her humiliation. At the ranch, at least she would be far from everyone who knew. "How far?" she asked. 3 days' ride. We leave tomorrow if you agree. And I would be your housekeeper. Only that." Heath nodded firmly. "Only that. You have my word." She studied his face. His blue eyes held no deceit, just steady honesty. "I accept," she whispered. Heath stood. "Then we start fresh." Quote, that night, Lydia lay awake in her hotel room, thinking of the strange twist fate had taken. Sold in the square by noon, freed by a stranger by evening. And tomorrow she would ride into an unknown future beside the man who had bought her freedom. And for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The next morning came with a soft golden light spilling over Sheridan. Lydia dressed in the new riding skirt and jacket Heath had purchased for her. The clothes felt unfamiliar, but they also felt like a beginning. When she stepped downstairs, Heath was already waiting, tall and calm, her small carpet bag in his hand. "Ready?" he asked. She took a steadying breath. "Yes." He helped her mount the gentle chestnut mare he called Penny, then swung onto his black stallion. As they rode out of Sheridan, Lydia kept her head high. She wouldn't look back at the place that had stripped her of everything. Heath rode beside her, a steady presence, letting silence sit comfortably between them. Once they reached open land, the air felt cleaner. The land stretched wide, with rolling hills, tall grass, and early wildflowers. Lydia felt her shoulders loosen for the first time in days. Around midday, they stopped near a small stream to rest the horses and eat. Lydia sat on a fallen log, nibbling bread and cheese as she watched Heath refill their canteens. "How did you end up in Sheridan yesterday?" she asked. "My horse threw a shoe," Heath replied, sitting beside her. "I wasn't planning to stop at all. Fate had other ideas." "Providence," Lydia murmured. "Or good timing," Heath said. Then he asked gently, "And you? How long were you living with Thomas's choices?" Lydia stared at the grass, running a finger along her skirt. 4 years. He was charming in Boston. I thought I married a gentleman. But when we came west, the gambling grew worse. He believed one lucky hand would fix everything. And then he put you on that block," Heath said darkly. "Yes." She swallowed hard. "I don't think I realized until that moment that he never truly loved me. A man who loves doesn't sell his wife." "No," Heath said quietly. "He doesn't." The way he said it sent a small warmth through her, a warmth she didn't understand. The following days passed in a quiet rhythm. Lydia grew more comfortable in her saddle. Heath told her about the trails, the wildlife, and the mountains that rose in the distance. They slept in a small way station the first night, then under a sky filled with stars the second. Lydia found herself stealing glances at Heath, his sure way with the horses, his calm voice, his silent strength. On the afternoon of the third day, they crested a hill. Heath pulled his stallion to a stop. "There," he said softly, "that's the North Star." Below them spread a green valley, crossed by a shining stream. A large log house sat at its center, smoke curling from the chimney. Nearby were smaller cabins, stables, a bunkhouse, and fenced cattle pastures. In the distance, the mountains rose like guardians. Lydia's breath caught. "It's beautiful!" Heath smiled. "Welcome home." They rode down into the valley, where a stout woman hurried onto the porch. Martha Wilson, the ranch cook and caretaker, studied Lydia with kind eyes. "Well now," Martha said warmly, "we've been needing help around here. You must be Mrs. Owens." "Lydia, please," she replied. Behind Martha came her husband Charlie, Heath's foreman. He greeted Lydia with a friendly grin and a firm handshake. After supper, Heath walked her to a small cabin near the main house. He lit a lamp, revealing neat furnishings, a quilt-covered bed, and a small fireplace. "It's simple," Heath said, "but it's yours." "It's perfect," Lydia whispered. He paused at the door. "Rest. We'll talk duties tomorrow." His eyes met hers briefly, steady, gentle, unreadable, before he wished her good night. When he was gone, Lydia ran her fingers along the quilt. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt safer here than she had in years. Over the next days, Lydia learned the rhythm of the ranch. She cooked, cleaned the main house, tended the kitchen garden with Martha, and prepared meals for Heath and the ranch hands. She learned Heath liked simple foods and strong coffee. She learned he kept his study organized but often forgot to eat lunch. She noticed he always opened doors for her, even if his hands were full. The ranch came alive with noise each morning. Horses, tools, men calling to one another. And every evening, Heath returned dusty and tired from the cattle or fences. He always paused in the doorway, scanning for Lydia, as if she were the first thing he wanted to see. One night, after supper, they sat in the main house as a storm gathered outside. Thunder shook the valley. Rain hammered the roof. Lydia felt the tension in Heath's posture. "Are you worried?" she asked. "Calves in the north pasture," he said. "Storms like this are dangerous." Lightning cracked, startling her. She steadied herself on the table. Heath rose, grabbing his slicker. "I need to check on them. I'll be back soon." "Be careful," she said before she could stop herself. He stopped at the door, his voice low. "Wait up for me." She nodded. Thunder rumbled long after he left. Lydia cleaned the kitchen to distract herself, but her mind kept imagining him out in the rain. When the storm was at its worst, the front door burst open. Heath staggered in, soaked, muddy, and supporting another man half-conscious. "Lydia, help me," he said urgently. "It's Jeb Miller from the Circle M." His wagon turned over. Lydia rushed to assist. Together they lowered Jeb onto the sofa. His head was bleeding. His leg was twisted unnaturally. "I'll get Martha and Charlie," Heath said, breathless. "Stay with him." Lydia pressed cloths to Jeb's wounds, whispering reassurance. When Heath returned with help, the room filled with hurried voices. They worked until past midnight, setting the leg, cleaning wounds, calming Jeb's pain. Finally, the crisis was over. Heath dropped into a chair near the fire, soaked and exhausted. Lydia brought him hot coffee. His eyes lifted to hers, soft with something she didn't dare name. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "So were you." They shared a quiet moment as thunder faded into gentle rain. Lydia watched him, realizing she had never felt this safe with anyone before. Not even with her husband. And when Heath finally stood to go, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Lydia, I'm glad you're here." Her heart swelled. "So am I." Lydia slept lightly that night, her mind replaying the storm, the fear, and the moment Heath had looked at her with something far deeper than gratitude. When morning sunlight filled her cabin, she dressed quickly and walked toward the main house. Inside, Martha was stirring a pot on the stove, while Jeb dozed on the sofa, his injured leg raised and bandaged. Heath was nowhere in sight. "You should eat," Martha said gently. "You were up half the night." Lydia nodded and began preparing breakfast. She didn't ask about Heath, but she felt his absence like a weight. When he finally came in through the back door, wiping dust and rain from his boots, her breath caught. He looked tired, but when he saw her, something eased in his shoulders. "Morning," he said, his voice low. She turned from the stove. "Is everything all right?" "Better now," he replied softly. Lydia felt warmth rise in her cheeks. She carried a plate to the table, but Heath stepped forward and took it from her hands. "Sit," he said. "You've done enough." But she shook her head. "We share the work here." Their eyes held for a moment before he nodded and stepped back. Breakfast passed quietly, but the unspoken pull between them sat warm and steady in the room. The days that followed were busy. Lydia settled fully into her duties, and Jeb slowly regained his strength. Heath spent long hours with the herds, but every evening he returned to the main house, and Lydia always seemed to be waiting. Their conversations stretched longer with each passing night. He told her about his mother, a strong woman who taught him about fairness and kindness. Lydia told him about her father, who filled her childhood with books and hope. They laughed more, They shared silence more, and every now and then their hands brushed, sending a spark Lydia tried not to think about. On Sunday, the ranch slowed down. After the small church gathering held in the bunkhouse, Lydia packed a small lunch and took Penny for a ride. The fresh air felt good and she wanted time to clear her thoughts. She found a quiet lake surrounded by aspens and settled on a fallen log. She hadn't been sitting long when she heard hoofbeats. Turning, she saw Heath riding toward her. He stopped his stallion near Penny and dismounted. "Didn't expect to find you here," he said. She smiled. "I didn't think anyone else came this way." He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "I come here to think," he admitted. "This place has brought me peace for years." Lydia felt his words settle into her heart. They ate together quietly before she asked gently, "What is it you think about here?" He hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "My mother, my father, mistakes, hopes, and lately—" He paused. "And lately?" she whispered. "You." Her breath caught. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to narrow until there was nothing but him. Before either of them could say more, clouds began gathering in the west. Heath stood quickly. "A storm's coming. We should head back." Quote. They rode side by side, laughter rising between them as the wind whipped through their hair. But by the time they reached the ranch, the sky was darkening fast. "Go inside," Heath told her. "I'll check the calves again." "No, it's too dangerous," she said. He gave her a steady look. "I'll be all right. Stay warm." Lydia watched him disappear into the storm, her chest tightening with worry. Hours later, lightning lit the valley as she waited by the window. When the door finally burst open, Heath stumbled inside, soaked, muddy, and carrying Jeb, who was bloody and dazed. The night became chaos and courage. And through it all, Lydia saw who Heath truly was, a man whose first instinct was always protection. By the time Jeb was settled and sleeping and Martha and Charlie retired to their cabin, only Lydia and Heath remained awake. The storm had quieted, leaving only soft rain on the roof. "You should rest," she told him. "I wanted to talk to you," he replied. She froze. He stepped closer. Rain, dark hair falling near his eyes. "When I was out there in the storm, I kept thinking of one thing." "What?" she whispered. "You, worrying about me, waiting for me. It felt like home." Lydia's breath hitched. "Heath." He took her hands gently. "I've been trying to stay silent because I didn't want to push you." "You've been through enough hurt." Her heart pounded. "But I can't pretend anymore. Lydia, I care for you, deeply, more than I should. More than I ever expected to." Her chest tightened with emotion, tears filled her eyes. "Heath," she began again. He shook his head softly. "You don't owe me anything. Not a promise, not a future, not a word. I just needed you to know that your courage, your kindness, your strength, they've changed this place. They've changed me." A tear slipped down Lydia's cheek. "I care for you too," she whispered. "I didn't expect it. I didn't look for it, but I feel it." The relief that washed over Heath's face was soft and beautiful. He lifted her chin gently with his fingers. "May I?" he asked in a whisper. Lydia nodded. His lips met hers with a tenderness that stole her breath. The kiss was soft at first, then deepened with the warmth of everything they had held back. When they finally pulled away, Lydia rested her forehead against his chest, her heart racing. "Heath!" she breathed. "I'm here!" he whispered. And for the first time in years, Lydia felt truly safe. Their story, their healing, their love had only just begun, growing in the quiet strength of a ranch called the North Star.